Story 1.
The Sugar Man. When I was about 9 or 10, my dad got offered this insanely high-paying job that came with one major catch. We had to move from the middle of nowhere in rural Pennsylvania to Woodridge, Virginia, a suburb so polished and upscale it felt like stepping into a movie. I say, had to move, but really, my parents were overjoyed. They made the decision fast. One month we were barely scraping by in a rundown house with stained carpet and creaky pipes. The next we were pulling into a wide driveway beside a house that had 3 stories and a stone fountain out front. I was too young to grasp the full scope of the change, but I knew enough to realize we weren't struggling anymore. You're probably wondering how I felt about all of it. Honestly, it didn't hit me that hard. I wasn't close with anyone back in Pennsylvania. I was one of those loner kids who read too much and talked too little. My parents later told me that part of the reason they moved so eagerly was because they hoped the fresh start would help me come out of my shell. The new house was huge, but what really made an impression on me, and my 2 older brothers, Derek and Martin, was the backyard. It was massive and ended in a wall of thick, twisting hedges. Hidden within those hedges was the crown jewel, the treehouse. Only, calling it a treehouse feels disrespectful. It was more like a tree castle, built across 6 or 7 enormous trees, complete with multiple levels and an actual staircase, not just some shaky ladder made of 2x4s. Someone had clearly spent real money on it, and it was clear it had been professionally constructed. For a while, all 3 of us played in that treehouse constantly. It was our personal fortress, and we loved it. But, as brothers do, Derek and Martin eventually grew out of it. They hit that phase where everything was lame, and suddenly the treehouse wasn't cool anymore. I tried to keep them interested, but they weren't having it. Eventually, I became the only one who still played up there. One afternoon, I climbed up to the top level and noticed something sitting in the corner, a folded piece of paper. It was written in big, shaky letters that said, "Hi. I'm the Sugar Man. What's your name?" At first, I thought it was one of my brothers messing with me, maybe trying to get me to believe in some made-up game. There was a stack of paper I hadn't noticed before, so I wrote back using one of the old markers we kept up there. For the next few days, notes continued to appear. Every time I went up there after school, there'd be another message from the Sugar Man. It was fun. They were silly and playful at first. Jokes, riddles, even crude drawings of smiling faces. I was convinced one of my brothers had secretly come around and was trying to lure me back into shared play. I didn't ask them about it directly because I was afraid they'd stop if I called them out. But then, the questions started to change. The Sugar Man asked things like, "What time do you usually come outside to play?" Or, "Do your parents leave the back door unlocked?" The kind of stuff that didn't seem like my brothers would need to ask. I answered anyway, innocently, eagerly. But then came the question that flipped everything. "Which window is your bedroom?" That made my stomach turn even as a kid, but I still didn't say anything. I wanted to believe it was a prank. That night, though, I finally broke. The next note said something like, "What do your pajamas smell like?" It was gross. I remember my whole body getting hot with embarrassment and confusion. I ran back inside and demanded to know which of my brothers was messing with me. They just laughed, swore up and down they hadn't left any notes, and started teasing me for talking to ghosts. I ran off crying, humiliated and angry. But instead of going to my parents, I decided I'd catch them in the act. That night, I lay in bed, eyes wide open. And then, just like out of a movie, I heard tapping on my window. I froze. My window faced the backyard. No one should have been out there. I didn't move. I barely breathed. The tapping went on until I finally passed out from exhaustion. In the morning, I yanked open the curtains, already feeling dread coiling in my gut. Dozens of marshmallows, white, puffy, perfectly round, were taped to the glass. I wanted to scream. This wasn't funny anymore. I was furious. So that night, I stayed up again. This time, I was ready. Sure enough, the tapping returned. I sprang up and threw open the curtain, expecting to see one of my dumb brothers laughing at me. But it wasn't either of them. It was a man. An old, sickly man with blotchy, yellow eyes and rotting teeth, his grin wide and cracked. His skin sagged in patches and his breath fogged the glass as he smiled at me like we were old friends. I screamed louder than I ever had in my life. My parents burst into the room, but by the time they looked outside, he was gone.
Story 2.
Whispers from the Canopy. I haven't told many people about this. I wouldn't even be thinking about it if the house didn't feel so damn quiet lately. My youngest son, Aiden, just left for college. Christy and I are officially empty nesters. It's strange, we used to dream of silence, but now that it's here, it feels heavier than we imagined. Like the house itself is holding its breath. Anyway. The quiet brought back a memory I've buried for years. I'm a carpenter by trade. I've always loved working with my hands, building things from scratch, sanding down imperfections, measuring twice, cutting once. When Aiden was little, I built him a treehouse in the backyard. Not just a platform nailed to a branch, a real treehouse. Walls, a roof, railings, even a small shingled awning over the door. I poured my whole self into it. And it's still there, nestled at the edge of the woods behind our house in Ash Hollow, Maine. Christy hated it at first. Said it was too tall. Too risky. But Aiden was the kind of boy who would have climbed up there whether we let him or not, so I figured better to make it safe than fight it. He loved that thing. It was his kingdom. Now, here's where things turn. We live at the end of a dead-end street. Peaceful. Private. Beyond our backyard is a dense patch of woods. That's one of the reasons we bought the place. No foot traffic, no neighbors behind us. Just trees. I placed the treehouse within perfect view of our bedroom window. I couldn't see inside it, but I had a clear line of sight to the ladder in case he ever fell. Aiden was about 8 when it started. He began talking about a friend named Ollie. At first, Christy and I assumed Ollie was a neighborhood kid. But when we asked around, nobody had ever heard of an Ollie. Then Aiden told us Ollie didn't live nearby, he lived in the trees. And not just that. Ollie was made of bark and teeth, whatever that meant. I thought it was cute. Kids and their imaginations, right? But as time went on, Aiden spent more and more time in the treehouse. Alone. With no toys, no books, no music. Just himself and Ollie. Christy grew uneasy. She said it felt off, the way he talked about Ollie, not like a kid playing pretend, but like someone in a conversation with someone real. When I asked him what they talked about, Aiden would just say, he doesn't like me to repeat it. I finally pushed him one day. I asked why Ollie never came inside. Aiden said something like, he gets sick in the house. He only eats outside. When I asked what that meant, he shrugged. I let it go, but I started paying closer attention. Then one Saturday, Aiden came home with a black eye. He told me he'd gotten in a fight. I asked who with. He looked down and mumbled, Ollie. I scolded him for lying, but he didn't budge. Christy was convinced he got hit by one of the neighborhood boys and was just covering for them. She wanted the treehouse gone right away. I didn't. That thing had taken weeks to build. And besides, I wasn't ready to believe anything weird was going on. The next day, I climbed up into the treehouse myself. I wish I hadn't. There were socks, children's socks, dirty, stiff with mud. Sneakers too, ones I didn't recognize. Plates, wrappers, empty juice boxes, chewed up plastic utensils. Stuff that wasn't ours. Stuff Aiden couldn't have carried up there without me noticing. And on the walls, drawings. Not cute ones. Pencil sketches of animals, wild-looking, frantic strokes, like something out of a disturbed kid's notebook. A wolf with black holes for eyes. An owl whose beak was replaced with fingers. A centipede the size of a man, its face just scribbled over. I came down shaking. When I confronted Aiden, he said Ollie needed food. That he forgets things, like clothes. That sometimes he brought gifts for the animals, so they'd stay quiet. What animals? Wolf. Owl. Centipede. The same ones from the walls. That was it for me. I told Aiden he was done. No more treehouse. He cried. But I was scared. Deep down, I knew something was very wrong. And then came the final straw. One night, I was looking out our bedroom window, just out of habit. I saw movement. My heart sank. I thought Aiden had snuck back up. But it wasn't him. It was someone else. A child. But not one I recognized. Thin. Frail. Dirty. Clothes hanging off his frame like rags. He climbed down the ladder like he'd done it 1,000 times. I bolted out the door, yelling. The kid turned, and ran. Not like a normal kid, though. He moved too fast. Too smooth. He disappeared into the woods before I even made it to the bottom of the yard. We called the cops. Every family on our street confirmed their kids were home safe. No one knew who he was. No missing kids reported. Aiden told the police that Ollie lived with his friends in the woods. That they were part animal, part forest magic. And that Ollie wanted him to leave home and join them forever. When Aiden refused, Ollie would growl and make cracking sounds with his mouth. We never let him near the treehouse again. Police searched the woods. Nothing. Christy still believes Ollie wasn't a boy at all. That he was something else. Something old. Something that wears the shape of a boy when it needs to. I don't know what I believe. But I still see that damn treehouse every day. Still feel it watching me. And some nights, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear the floorboards creak.
Story 3.
Eyes in the leaves. This happened just a few weeks ago, so it's still raw. I'm a sophomore at a university in Washington State, but my parents still live in Sycamore Hills, Oregon, a sleepy suburb with big trees, winding streets, and enough nosy neighbors to make any real privacy impossible. I flew home for fall break in early October, just for a few days. I like to check in, see how they're doing. But if I'm being honest, coming home always puts me on edge. My parents are traditional. Very traditional. They're sweet people, but they haven't quite accepted the fact that I'm an adult. And the biggest taboo in their house? Weed. Even now, with it being legal here, they freak out if I even mention it. They'd lose their minds if they ever found out I smoked. Which is why I've gotten very good at sneaking around. I used to be a little menace as a teenager, climbing out my window, hiding lighters in the laundry hamper, all that. But these days, I'm more careful. When I came home for break, I brought a small stash and hid it in the only place I knew they wouldn't find it, the old treehouse out front. Yeah, it's still there. My parents built it for me when I was a kid. It's weathered now, the wood faded and creaky, but it's hidden in the high branches, totally out of view from the house unless you know exactly where to look. From up there, I can see the yard, the street, even a couple windows, but no one can see me. On Saturday, the night before I was set to fly back, my parents went to some charity banquet. They were dressed up and excited, which meant they'd be gone for hours. I had the house to myself, but I didn't want to take any risks, especially with the smell, so I climbed up into the treehouse just before sunset. It was cold. I could see my breath. There's something about fall air that makes you think too much. I sat there, letting the nostalgia creep in, watching the light fade behind the trees. I felt high, happy, and alone in the best way. Then a light came on inside the house. I blinked. No one was supposed to be home. I froze, staring through the leaves. My heart started pounding in my ears. A few seconds later, something moved in the backyard. I leaned forward to get a better look, and saw 3 hooded figures creeping along the side of the house. Fast. Quiet. Focused. I didn't move. I couldn't. That's when I saw a 4th figure already standing at the front steps, who then opened the front door and let the others in. It hit me all at once. We were being robbed. I didn't know what to do. My phone was in my hand before I even realized it. I dialed 911 and whispered, barely breathing. I told the dispatcher what I saw. I couldn't even tell her the address without stammering. She said officers were en route. I was about to put my phone away when I made a fatal mistake. The screen lit up. One of the guys outside, the one still pacing in the yard, noticed. His head snapped toward me, then upward into the trees. He saw me. I ducked behind the wooden slats, but it was too late. "Hey!" The voice sliced through the dark like a blade. I peeked out just in time to see him sprinting toward the base of the tree. He moved like he knew the layout, like he'd been there before. He started climbing. I panicked. There was nothing around me except my backpack and my glass bong. Out of pure instinct, I grabbed the bong and hurled it straight down. It shattered against his shoulder, and he screamed, falling backward with a loud curse. I didn't wait to see what he did next. He ran, back toward the house, yelling something at the others. A few seconds later, all 4 of them burst out the back door and disappeared into the woods beyond the yard. 3 minutes later, red and blue lights flooded the street. I was still up there, shaking so bad I thought I'd fall climbing down. My hands were numb. My legs felt like they didn't belong to me. The officers were kind. Professional. They said I did the right thing, but they had a lot of questions I couldn't answer. I hadn't seen faces. I didn't know if they had a car. I didn't even know how they knew my parents were gone. The theory was, it was a targeted job. They'd been watching the house. Knew the routine. But what they didn't count on, was me, hiding up in the trees like some ghost from a story. My parents pulled into the driveway shortly after. The look on their faces when they saw the cop cars. I'll never forget that. They were shaken. But grateful. I flew back to school the next morning. I haven't slept right since. And sometimes, when I close my eyes, I see a hand reaching up through the planks again.
Story 4.
The head in the hatch. When I was a kid, we lived in a house with a big yard and a treehouse in the back. It wasn't one of those fancy, multi-level things like you see on HGTV now. It was old school. Wooden planks, rope ladder, a hatch in the floor to climb in and out. But to me and my older brother Miles, it was a fortress. A spaceship. A pirate ship. It was everything. My family moved into that house in Crestfield, Ohio when I was 4. I don't remember much about where we lived before that. That house, and that treehouse, are what my childhood was built on. We stayed there for 10 years, right up until I started high school. It was a good house. Mostly. But one night changed the way I remembered it forever. I was 12. At that age, I was a moody little punk, always getting in trouble at school and mouthing off to my parents. I'd get grounded a lot, and I had a flair for the dramatic. When I got angry, I'd run out to the backyard and sleep in the treehouse. My parents didn't love it, but they figured it was harmless. The yard was fenced in, and I was still technically home. That night was one of those nights. I had gotten into a huge fight with my dad about a report from school, and he'd banned me from video games for the week. I stormed out, grabbed some pillows and a blanket, and made my way up the hatch. Unbeknownst to him, I had my Nintendo DS in my pocket. I played Animal Crossing for hours until my eyes started to burn. Then I passed out, or, I thought I did. I don't think I was asleep more than 20 minutes when I heard someone calling my name. Jared. At first, I thought I imagined it. But then it came again, deeper this time. Jared, are you up there? It was a man's voice. Deep. Calm. Almost friendly. My heart started pounding. I stayed quiet. Then I heard the creak of the ladder. Someone was climbing up. I crawled backward, holding my breath, as a shadow appeared through the hatch. A head. Just a silhouette at first. No features. Just the unmistakable shape of a man peering in through the opening. Ah. There you are. I whispered, Dad. The head didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared. I couldn't see his face, and he didn't make a sound. We stayed like that for a long moment, me frozen, him crouched halfway into the hatch. Something in my gut twisted. I knew this wasn't my father. I jumped up and ran to the window, screaming as loud as I could. Dad! Dad! Someone's out here. Lights turned on in the house. A door slammed. I heard feet pounding across the lawn. Whoever was in the hatch scrambled down the ladder and vanished into the darkness. When my parents got to the treehouse, I was crying so hard I couldn't talk. My dad climbed up and checked everything. Nothing. No one. They believed me, though. This wasn't like in movies, where the parents dismiss it as a dream or overactive imagination. My mom said I looked like I'd seen death. And I think, in a way, I had. We filed a police report the next day. My uncle, who used to be a deputy, helped out. But there wasn't much to go on. All I could say was that the man had a deep voice, knew my name, and tried to come into the treehouse in the middle of the night. That was enough for my dad. He added a motion-activated floodlight. He checked every window lock in the house. But we never saw him again. Still, I couldn't shake it. I never slept in the treehouse again. There was one thing that haunted me more than anything else. The way he said my name. He didn't shout it. He didn't threaten me. He spoke it. Like he'd known it for years. And every now and then, I catch myself remembering the way his head just hovered in that hatch, still, watching, like he was waiting for something. Like he still is.